Welcome everybody to another episode of Ranjit Coaching. In this episode, we're going to be talking about understanding narcissistic abuse. This is the first video in a 10-part series called Overcoming Narcissistic Abuse, a Comprehensive Guide for Success. Before I begin, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the link in the description box below for my website. On my website, I have resources for narcissistic abuse recovery, life coaching, personal training, yoga, martial arts, and more. This video isn't designed to diagnose or treat anybody. It's strictly for informational purposes only. Narcissistic abuse refers to a pattern of toxic and harmful behaviors exhibited by somebody with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder towards their victim. It involves manipulation, control, betrayal, emotional exploitation, psychological harm, and in some cases, physical and sexual abuse. In the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, narcissistic personality disorder is defined as comprising a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, beginning in early childhood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by the presence of at least 5 of the following 9 criteria: a grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, a belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special high-status people or institutions, a need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitative behavior, a lack of empathy, envy of others or a belief that others are envious of him or her, a demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. The DSM-5 doesn't make a distinction between the two well-accepted types of narcissism: the overt narcissist and the covert narcissist. Let's go over some key characteristics of an overt narcissist. Grandiosity. Overt narcissists display their sense of superiority and grandiosity openly. They often exaggerate their achievements, talents, and abilities, seeking constant admiration and validation from others. Attention seeking. They crave attention and admiration and will go to great lengths to ensure they are the center of attention in social situations. Lack of empathy. Overt narcissists typically show little empathy for others and may exploit or manipulate people to serve their own needs. Difficulty handling criticism. They have a fragile self-esteem beneath their grandiose exterior and react poorly to criticism or perceived slights. Let's go over some key characteristics of a covert narcissist. Insecurity masked by humility. Covert narcissists often appear modest and shy on the surface, but underneath they harbor feelings of superiority and entitlement. Manipulative behavior. Unlike overt narcissists who seek attention openly, covert narcissists may manipulate situations behind the scenes to ensure they receive the validation and admiration they crave. Victim mentality. Covert narcissists portray themselves as victims, using self-pity to garner sympathy and attention from others. Passive-aggressive tendencies. Rather than confronting others directly, covert narcissists may use subtle forms of manipulation and passive-aggressive behavior to control and undermine those around them. Difficulty with intimacy. Covert narcissists struggle with genuine emotional intimacy as they are primarily focused on their own needs and lack the empathy required for healthy relationships. To summarize, overt narcissism is characterized by overt displays of grandiosity and an insatiable need for constant admiration. Individuals with overt narcissism often showcase their perceived superiority openly. exaggerating their accomplishments, talents, and attributes to garner attention and validation from others. Their behavior tends to be attention-seeking as they strive to maintain a spotlight on themselves in social settings. On the other hand, covert narcissism manifests in more subtle and nuanced ways. While appearing modest and unassuming on the surface, covert narcissists harbor deep feelings of entitlement and superiority. They may manipulate situations behind the scenes to ensure they receive the validation and admiration they crave, often resorting to passive-aggressive tactics and portraying themselves as victims to elicit sympathy and attention. Despite their differing approaches, both overt and covert narcissists share common traits. Both lack empathy for others, viewing them primarily as tools for fulfilling their own needs and desires. Additionally, they possess an inflated sense of self-importance, though it may be more overt in one subtype and more hidden in the other. In social interactions, overt narcissists tend to dominate conversations and seek admiration openly, while covert narcissists may subtly manipulate and control situations to maintain their perceived superiority. Now that we've covered the two main types of narcissists, overt and covert, let's talk about the narcissistic abuser's cycle. The narcissistic cycle of abuse is designed to control the victim and the outcome of the relationship. It includes key phases. Those phases are love bomb, devalue, discard, Hoover, repeat, which means the cycle of abuse starts over again at love bomb. If the victim successfully breaks free from this cycle, the victim will be doing what's called a final discard. Once the final discard is initiated, the narcissist will usually react in adverse ways. This phase is called post-separation abuse. It includes smear campaigns, attempts to sabotage the victim's work, false police reports, court abuse, including frivolous claims and motions, recruiting abusers by proxy, also known as flying monkeys, and an all-out attempt to destroy the victim's life. I am a survivor of narcissistic abuse. My personal experience is dealing with a covert narcissist. I went through all of the phases, and once I figured out what she was, once I started telling the truth, once I could see through the mask, she attempted to destroy my life, sabotage my job, and started a massive smear campaign. I have now taken my experience to not only help others in similar situations, but to start a narcissistic abuse recovery program. I have a support group that I offer. The experience was a learning experience for me. I've spent the last 3 years studying narcissism. I seek to help as many people as I can because unless someone has experienced narcissistic abuse, it's almost impossible to see from the outside. If you're interested in my narcissistic abuse recovery program, please don't forget to check it out on my website. I will also link my support group page in the description box below. Let's discuss each of the phases in a little bit more detail, starting with love bomb. Love bombing, also known as the idealization phase, refers to a manipulative tactic used by narcissists to gain control and manipulate their victims. During this phase, the narcissist showers the victim with excessive attention, affection, compliments, and gifts, essentially idealizing them and making them feel special and cherished. This phase is characterized by intense flattery, declarations of love, and promises of a perfect future together. The narcissist often appears charming, attentive, and seemingly perfect, creating an illusion of an ideal relationship. Victims may feel overwhelmed by the attention and affection, leading them to believe they found their soulmate or their perfect partner. However, the love bombing phase is not genuine. It serves as a manipulation tactic to groom the victim and establish control over them. The narcissist's ultimate goal during this phase is to hook the victim emotionally, making them more susceptible to manipulation and exploitation in the subsequent phases of the abuse cycle. Once the victim is emotionally invested and dependent on the narcissist, the idealization phase typically transitions to the devaluation phase, where the narcissist's behavior shifts dramatically, and they may start criticizing, belittling, and undermining the victim's self-esteem. This creates confusion and emotional turmoil for the victim, who may struggle to reconcile the loving partner they initially experienced with the sudden change in behavior. There are some key manipulation tactics used by the narcissist during the love bomb phase, including love bombing. This is where the perpetrator showers the victim with excessive attention, charm, affection, sex, gifts. This intense and overwhelming display of love and admiration is meant to make the victim feel special and valued. The narcissist will also future fake. This is another manipulative tactic where the perpetrator creates an illusion of a perfect future together, making promises and commitments that are often insincere. This tactic is designed to build trust and keep the victim emotionally invested in the relationship. During the love bomb phase, the narcissist will be mirroring the victim. Mirroring is when the perpetrator imitates the victim's behaviors, preferences, and characteristics to create a sense of familiarity and connection. Mirroring is used to establish rapport quickly and make the victim feel understood and accepted. The perpetrator feigns care and empathy for the victim's well-being. This deceptive display of concern is a tool to gain trust, control, or further the narcissist's personal agenda. The narcissist shows an unusually high level of interest in the victim's personal information, preferences, and vulnerabilities. All of this information and data helps the narcissist tailor their mask and manipulative strategies to the victim's specific wants and needs. During the love bomb phase, the narcissist is using what is called a false self or a mask. The narcissist constructs a false persona or an alter ego based on the information gathered during the information gathering phase. This facade is presented to the victim to gain acceptance and camouflage the true predatory nature of the narcissist. Compulsive deception is a common trait during the idealization phase. The narcissist invents false narratives about their past, victimization, or other aspects of their life to manipulate the victim and build the false persona. The idealization phase serves as a deceptive entry point for the narcissist to infiltrate the victim's emotional world and establish control. It creates a false sense of intimacy and connection, setting the stage for the subsequent stages of the narcissistic abuse cycle. Once the narcissist has the victim hooked, the devalue phase begins. The narcissistic devaluation phase is a stage in the cycle of a relationship with a narcissist where the narcissist starts to diminish, degrade, or belittle their partner or others close to them. This phase typically follows the idealization phase, during which the narcissist may have put their partner or victim on a pedestal, idealizing them and showering them with affection, attention, and admiration. During the devaluation phase, the narcissist's behavior undergoes a significant shift. They may become critical, emotionally distant, dismissive, or even hostile towards their partner. This behavior can be confusing and hurtful to the partner, who may struggle to understand what has changed and why they are suddenly being treated poorly. The devaluation phase is a systematic and calculated effort to diminish the victim's self-esteem, autonomy, and create emotional turmoil. During devaluation, the victim may experience blame shifting, where the narcissist avoids accountability by redirecting blame onto the victim or others. They may also blame external factors when confronted about their behavior. This tactic allows them to evade responsibility for their actions. The victim will then be subject to constant criticism, the continuous stream of negative feedback, disparaging remarks, and judgmental comments. This constant criticism erodes the victim's self-esteem and leaves them feeling worthless and emotionally distressed. The victim will also experience emotional neglect. This is when the narcissist withdraws emotional validation, attention, and care from the victim. This creates a sense of disconnection, making the victim feel unheard or taken for granted. The whole time, the victim is being exploited and taken advantage of by the narcissist, who exploits their trust for personal gain. This exploitation can take various forms such as emotional, intellectual, economic, social, or sexual exploitation without concern for the victim's well-being. Gaslighting is common during the devaluation phase. This is when the narcissist undermines the victim's perception of reality, making them doubt their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. This tactic involves denying facts and altering the victim's memories to create confusion, dependency, and ultimately gaining power and control. This is also when the trauma bond is starting to form. The narcissist will use what is called intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement, or trauma bonding, is when the narcissist alternates between idealizing and devaluing the victim, creating a cycle of emotional highs and lows. This intermittent reinforcement conditions the victim to accept the abuse and fosters trauma bonds as the victim becomes increasingly desperate to regain the idealization phase. The victim will also be isolated during devaluation. They will be manipulated into cutting off ties with family and friends, isolating them from the support system. This isolation allows the perpetrator to control the victim's access to information and influence their worldview, leaving the victim with no one to turn to as the abuse escalates. Covert narcissists will use silent treatment. Silent treatment is when the narcissist deliberately ignores or refuses to acknowledge the victim, using the silent treatment as a tactic to exert control, power, or punishment. This intentional withholding of communication causes feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and emotional distress in the victim. The victim may also be triangulated with others. This is when the narcissist creates and leverages dynamics where the victim is pitted in competition against others. This divide and conquer tactic causes conflict, chaos, and division as the narcissist strategically uses a third party to undermine the victim's confidence and foster insecurity, competition, and jealousy. The devaluation phase is designed to break down the victim's sense of self and increase their dependency on the narcissist. This sets the stage for further manipulation and control in the abuse cycle. The narcissist will devalue the victim for a significant period of time. Once the victim has been determined to be broken down enough, the discard phase is initiated by the narcissist. The discard phase in the cycle of narcissistic abuse is a painful and abrupt withdrawal of emotional and physical investment by the narcissist. This will mark the end of the relationship. The narcissist will view the victim as a devalued object. In the discard phase, the narcissist sees the victim as a devalued and negative object that must be removed from their life. The false persona, the mask, used to manipulate and infiltrate the victim's life is dropped, revealing the true nature of the narcissist. The narcissist will be cold and treat the victim cruelly. The soulmate is replaced by a very hateful stranger who treats the victim as a worthless inconvenience, causing shock, hurt, and emotional devastation. The narcissist will idealize new victims, and during this phase, the narcissist, while discarding their partner, may quickly move on to seek validation and attention from new people, new romantic partners, or new social partners. They may idealize these new people in their life, the same adoration and admiration they once directed towards their previous victim. There will be a distinct lack of empathy or remorse. The narcissist may display a complete lack of empathy or remorse during the discard phase. Kindness and devotion are forgotten, leaving the victim bewildered and emotionally devastated. The discard may have been carefully planned by the narcissist long before it happened. The narcissist will start a smear campaign. In all honesty, the smear campaign may have started during the devaluation phase. The narcissist may launch a smear campaign to destroy the victim's credibility, making it difficult for them to be believed if they disclose their experiences with the narcissist. The smear campaign may involve spreading false information and manipulating social circles, authorities, and bystanders. The narcissist may experience satisfaction over successfully fooling the victim and others. Other behaviors during the discard phase may include contempt, hostility, and fury or rage, aimed at striking terror in the victim and maintaining control. During the discard phase, the narcissist will use what is called DARVO. It stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. The narcissist will deny allegations, attack the victim's credibility, and reverse the roles, portraying themselves as the victim. This tactic is used to invalidate the victim's disclosures. Betrayal is very common during the discard phase. The victim's trust is repeatedly violated through broken promises and commitments. Betrayal may take the form of infidelity or other forms of deception, leaving the victim dealing with the fallout. The narcissist will project and disavow their undesirable thoughts, emotions, or traits by projecting them onto the victim. This cognitive distortion allows the narcissist to externalize their faults. The narcissist actively undermines the victim's progress and goals, chipping away at their self-esteem. They will sabotage the victim. Sabotage can involve withholding information, character assassination. The discard phase is a challenging and often traumatic experience for the victim as they confront the true nature of the narcissist and deal with the aftermath of their relationship. After a while, and some time has passed after the narcissist has discarded the victim, the narcissist may Hoover the victim. Hoovering is named after the vacuum. It means that the narcissist will try to suck the victim back into the relationship. This is when the cycle starts to repeat. In the abuse cycle, hoovering involves the perpetrator's deliberate attempts to reestablish a connection with the victim post-discard. Despite the emotional turmoil inflicted during the discard, narcissistic abusers persist in seeking control and gratification through reconnection. Narcissistic abusers lack empathy and genuine remorse for their victims. They will refuse to leave the victim alone even after causing them a significant amount of emotional and psychological harm. They exploit the emotional dependence cultivated in the victim to their advantage. The abuser will employ various tactics designed to suck the victim back into the relationship. The aim is to reignite the intense emotional trauma bonds and draw the victim back into the cycle of abuse. Narcissists may offer insincere apologies, known as faux apologies, often accompanied by excuses and blame shifting to evade accountability. During the Hoover phase, the narcissist may start to act like they did in the initial idealization phase. The abuser will shower the victim with attention, affection, flattery, sex, and whatever they can use to manipulate the victim back into the relationship. The narcissist may take deliberate actions or make statements that are aimed at triggering jealousy in the victim and exploiting their emotions to maintain control. They may also utilize triangulation. The narcissist will downplay the severity of their past harm, swiftly glossing over their transgressions in a bid to swiftly revert to idealization. The narcissist may seek sympathy or guilt from the victim. The abuser portrays themselves as a victim of circumstances, leveraging emotional support and validation to resume the relationship dynamics. In some cases, the abuser may refrain from hoovering. If this is the case, the victim has the final discard. This usually means that the victim has become aware and can see through the tactics or the mask of the narcissist. Or if the narcissist believes there's nothing left to exploit. If the Hoover is successful, the narcissist will initiate the love bomb, devalue, discard phase all over again. What is the purpose of this abuse cycle? There are two main purposes of the narcissistic abuse cycle. One is control and control of outcomes, and two is narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply refers to the attention, admiration, validation, or other forms of emotional sustenance that the narcissists seek to fulfill their insatiable need for admiration and affirmation of their superiority. It can come in various forms, including praise, compliments, admiration, attention, or even fear or envy from others. For narcissists, obtaining narcissistic supply is essential for maintaining their inflated sense of self-importance and superiority. They often rely on external validation to validate their self-worth and reinforce their grandiose self-image. Narcissistic supply serves as fuel for their ego boosting, their self-esteem, and providing a sense of power and control over others. Narcissists may go to great lengths to obtain narcissistic supply, manipulating and exploiting others to fulfill their needs. They may use charm, manipulation, and deceit to garner attention and admiration, often engaging in attention-seeking behaviors or seeking out relationships where they can be the center of attention. Ultimately, narcissistic supply is a central component of narcissistic personality disorder, driving the narcissist's constant search for validation and admiration from others to maintain their fragile self-esteem and sense of superiority. So we've talked about the two different types of narcissism, overt and covert. We've talked about the narcissistic abuse cycle and some manipulation tactics, and we talked about their goals, control, and supply. I think that it is time for me to share my story. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is because it empowers me. I also believe that my story will help other people who may be experiencing a similar situation. I'm going to discuss what happened. I'll cover some manipulation tactics, how I escaped, and how I decided to change my life after narcissistic abuse. In the near future, I plan on writing a book where I will go into detail of my narcissistic abuse experience, where I will expose everything that happened, everyone involved, but for now, this is my story. The events and facts in the story are true, and I keep evidence, including text messages, pictures, and court documents for my own protection. I dated a covert narcissist and went through the stages of love bomb, devalue, and discard. In the beginning, the relationship was amazing. It was fun and exciting. She was showing up for me and was everything I could ever want in a partner. We spent many nights conversing, staying up late, sharing intimacy, and adventuring. After a while, when I wanted to progress the relationship into something more stable and solid, things started to change. I was blind to the small abuses and tests at this time, as I was thinking she was just a sensitive person. At this point, I did not know her true intentions. Then the emotional and psychological abuse ramped up. It was either up, down, or plain upside down, but I never knew which way. So I was always walking on eggshells. Slowly over time, she insidiously coerced and instilled her control over my emotions. There was sleep deprivation. This is when she purposely would keep me awake into the early hours of the morning, knowing I had work the next day. Word salad, which are incoherent conversations covering a multitude of topics with no real end and usually in a circular fashion. And neglect. This is where she would ignore me. She used sex as a weapon and my survival mechanism of defending myself against me. Over time, building a trauma bond. The addiction. The trauma bond is a biochemical reaction in the brain where through positive and negative reinforcement, the brain becomes addicted, similar to drug or alcohol addiction. Through this, I stayed, always hoping if I did something different or changed, the person I met would return. She did not. She attempted a soft discard, and my response was just to try and see where things go, that I would change and fix things. Little did I know, I just fell into her trap. Things returned to normal for a little while. Then, just when I thought things were turning up and she was ready to give the relationship a solid go, she disappeared for a few days. She said it was a work trip and that she ended up with some friends from college. Then, there was silence. Here was a person who said they loved me and a refusal to communicate. At this time, I didn't see the red flags. I was blinded by the trauma bond and my love for somebody that didn't exist. I got a smiley text the next day when I asked for an update, as I had made her dinner the previous night when she never came home. What I found out later was absolutely devastating. She was acting different when she returned, and I observed behavior changes. No longer was I important to her. I was not worth her time. A few nights later, she came over and I asked directly, "Did you cheat on me?" To this, she admitted to multiple acts of infidelity, most likely to suck up all of my emotional pain, as it was all too easy and oh so abundant at hearing this. Not only did she cheat the first night she was gone, she then went back at least one additional time, according to her. I was blindsided and heartbroken, though I don't think I was meant to find out. I just think she didn't want to deal with me questioning her. She took the opportunity to inflict the maximum amount of emotional damage possible. After I called her out for not even caring, showing no remorse or empathy, not even an apology, I wanted to know why. When I asked why the first time and why she went back again, she told me because she wanted to. For a few days after, any form of communication was shut down for a while. I waited to hear for closure. During this time, she was off at friends or going back to see the other guy, basically acting as if everything was normal. My stress levels through the roof, my chest feeling the pressure of 1,000 pounds crushing it. How could someone that was so nice to everyone else be this cold and malicious to me? It was clear she was not truthful from the beginning about who she was. After that, she convinced many that I was the abuser and crazy. The reality was that my smear campaign had already started before the breakup. My emotional devastation just validated her claims of my instability. In reality, I was heartbroken and trauma bonded. Her family was also just as toxic and abusive, desperately trying to cover for her to hide her true self. They knew all along and joined in playing with my emotion. After our official breakup, we maintained some communication as I still wanted closure. She was using my desperation, heartbreak, and emotional state as fuel. She used my pain, confusion, and broken down self-esteem to lift her spirits in pursuit of new relationships. I realized later on that she had triangulated me during the relationship with other people. However, this was so much more painful because of the betrayal. She would come around when she wanted sex or attention after being rejected by another person. After she called off communication because I kept pressing for closure, answers, and a reason for her behavior, some time passed. I saw her out and about, and I could sense that something was wrong. I could feel her pain. I wanted to rescue my abuser, another factor of the trauma bond. For this reason, I reverse hoovered myself back into her orbit. Reverse hoover is when a victim reinitiates contact or breaks no contact with the narcissist. She had been freshly dumped and I wanted to help her. She accepted, and at first she acted nice, like the girl I first met. Then came the abuse, the blame shifting, and gaslighting as I sought answers. The narcissistic defense mechanisms went up. She had acted as if she was ready to start a relationship again and change. This was not true. She was using me as backburner supply. Backburner supply is somebody that they go to while they're grooming someone else. For this and everything, including using sex as a weapon, I called her out massively. When I wanted closure and answers now, I knew I had to find my own because she was withholding it. And to this effort, I started analyzing my ex. I wrote letters to describe how much she hurt me through betrayal. She knew since the first day this was the worst thing she could do, since she even spoke to that the day after she cheated on me. I was trying to appeal to the person she pretended to be in the beginning. I poured and poured my heart into someone who would manipulate, lie, stonewall, deflect, blame shift, gaslight, and project. Where was the person I first met? I had to know, so I made a decision to dive deeper into this person for true understanding. I made a choice to absorb all of her projections, every projection, throughout a relationship from the beginning to the end. And then I found her, beneath the mask she presents to everybody else. This discovery and deep dive was painful to say the least, and I don't recommend it. But I finally solved the puzzle of who she was hiding. I love a good puzzle. Unfortunately, this was a painful one. Here was a person who tells me, your self-improvement on the daily is a stress and anxiety to me, that I needed to take personal responsibility. The fact was, I was the only one working on self-improvement and the only one who was taking personal responsibility for mine and her actions. Something I chronicled in my letters to her. I was doing all the work, including hers. When I finally had enough abuse, I pulled out the mirror and showed her exactly who she was. And to this, she ran. I didn't do it out of anger or to hurt her feelings, but rather to bring truth and show her that she was hurting me, an act of emotional and psychological defense. I felt bad about this and kept apologizing, ruminating, and taking on more projections. I analyzed each projection as I uncovered she was accusing me of everything she was actively doing, including stalking her more recent ex-boyfriend, but she couldn't accept accountability for her own actions. She had to project them onto me. These mechanisms were in place to protect her false self and mask, something I would soon find out she was willing to defend at all costs. I really wanted to touch the heart of the wounded inner child behind her mask, her internal negative mindset. The narcissistic defense mechanisms protect from harm. I wanted to show her her destructive ways, how they hurt others and how they hurt her. I wanted to save this person. This was not possible, and for that I became enemy number one. I wasn't supposed to find out who she was. I was supposed to get destroyed and stay destroyed through betrayal trauma. I was supposed to stay broken and wait for her return in the narc harem. The narc harem is where narcissists shelve all of their previous sources of supply, where they keep them on rotation for when they need them. This could be previous romantic relationships or friends. In some ways, I feel bad for her, constantly repeating the same cycles, never wanting to face her part and take accountability or responsibility in what ends up being self-sabotage. She believes she is the victim, yet also believes she is superior and can do no wrong. With that comes never taking accountability, never apologizing, and thus never growing, though she will learn to manipulate better. Deep down, I believe she knows why her romances fall apart, but she can't admit it to herself. She acted as if she is entitled to do whatever she wants without consequence, and she doesn't form real connection with anyone, just through her false self. When I brought this up, even about her friends, she snapped back, so what? Some of these people I tried to tell about the abuse, the ones I knew she was using to feel better, using as ego-boosting supply and abusing through manipulation and gaslighting. Most of them didn't believe me, an after effect of the smear campaign. How could this nice, vulnerable, humble, and sweet person be what I say? I wasn't supposed to find out, and I wasn't supposed to tell anyone. A year later, after I had moved on and was happily in a relationship, my abuser tried to get me removed from a business where both she and my fiance worked. Fate had brought us together again. We live in a small island community. Crossing paths isn't uncommon. In this case, my fiance had been hired first, and my abuser had been hired on after. I was trying to support my fiance, taking her to work, working on shared interests and spending time with her since we work opposite shifts. When several attempts at removal didn't work or keeping me out because I wasn't doing anything, I was staying away, I was ignoring, and not even looking at her. My abuser falsely claimed horrendous things, including rape, domestic violence, and anything that she could blame me for. None of these things were true. She orchestrated a detention with law enforcement by making false accusations with help of people she had lied to. She had convinced others of her narrative through omissions, lies, and half-truths. Probably the worst feeling was realizing she was using my story with herself as the victim. Having been presented with a false persona and being intimate with her, I felt raped myself. In fact, this was emotional rape. She would later accuse me of these very things in court. A projection of her subconscious and an effort to assassinate my character. None of these things were true. That was how she was convincing others. Some people using a very real story with our roles reversed, to other people admitting to cheating and playing the victim. After calling in a false accusation at my place of work, I was detained at gunpoint and almost shot, all in order to serve her purpose of getting a protection order served and initiate my removal from that business. She was trying to disappear me. She didn't want to see me doing well, thriving, and moving on. Most importantly, she didn't want my actual character and personality to destroy her smear campaign and the negative image she had been telling people about me. One many are duped into blindly believing. She had to try to take me down. Add on top of that, the upcoming court hearing to try to destroy my life, my job, and relationship. During this time, people protected her. Even when my fiance and I expressed increasing concern of my ex's intimidation and an actual physical assault on my fiance. We asked repeatedly for video evidence of this to assist in initiating a criminal investigation. However, our requests were delayed to the point that the camera system no longer held the needed footage. I believe this was because no one expected me to win in court, and the business wanted to keep its employee over doing what was right. At a minimum, this is self-serving behavior. At worst, it's employer negligence. My ex was willing to abuse and lie to law enforcement, the judge, and the court system just to attack me, along with her family and her so-called friend. This hearing for her petition was dismissed by the judge on lack of evidence of her claims and failure to be credible. For my defense, I brought forth facts and evidence which discredited her, her claims, her friends she had gaslit that also participated, and her smear campaign. After that, she quit shortly thereafter and ran away. She ran away from the ego injuries, from accountability, and from herself. When I tried to tell people the truth and exercise my legal right to challenge her false statement she had been allowed to share, several people tried to silence me, and even more didn't want to hear the truth. Whether for image, their fear of looking like they made a wrong decision, or for fear of confrontation due to their part in my abuse, I was silenced. Silenced when my ex had been allowed to spew hate, lies, false accusations against me freely. Someone even threatened to impose consequences if I continued to tell the truth and defend myself, their fear being I would expose too much and their business image would be tarnished, especially when my ex was working with children. This wasn't the only business that threatened to impose consequences. Others, where she had lied, also threatened to do the same. I believe there was more happening in the background, though I can't confirm it. The way I see it is if they didn't want it to be the truth, they wouldn't have done it. The more someone tries to silence me, the closer to exposing the truth I am. Yet by trying to silence me, they expose themselves. My ex, who initiated this, by her own admission in court documents, has a history of domestic violence from a previous relationship, a stay in a psychiatric hospital. I believe this was what they call narcissistic collapse or mortification. This is when the narcissist cannot get supply, usually when they are isolated by themselves and they have to sit with themselves and their mask falls. She did cheat on me. She has a history of suicidal issues and addictions, yet I was not believed. This is why it's hard for the abused to speak up, especially for male victims, the fear of not being believed or consequences. This is a quote that I came up with while I was going through this. Those who do not wish to see the truth only want to stay blinded by the veil of their beliefs or hide behind a wall of lies. Ranjit. My heart goes out to all who she misguided, manipulated, and gaslit in the process, several of whom blindly helped her attack me, defended her, and who refused to speak up the truth of what they have seen with their eyes without evidence to her words. I believe these are good people, yet caught in her web. I have come to realize some judge me without even knowing me. They look through the lens of the smear campaign, not their own eyes. When I asked for them to tell the truth, they refused. Some only chose to hear my ex's side and then took no action when I needed help, saying they want to stay out of it. This is abuse by proxy. Some of them are flying monkeys, and they're doing it willingly. Others were used and manipulated. Some still do not believe me. Sometimes it's easier to believe the lie. One person got mad at me for showing them the truth. They had judged me through the lens of the smear campaign, never really getting to know me at all. The smear campaign and the gaslighting had the effect of preventing them from hearing the true version of events, shutting down communication and isolating me. I am open to discourse and communication. However, their refusal is their limitation, not mine. Being honest and having proof saved me. Me being genuine, authentic, resilient, and unapologetically myself saved me. Again, I am thankful for everyone who was part of my support system, especially my fiance. They don't want the mirror, nor do they want to see you do better without them. Give it to them anyway. Ranjit. As a thriver after abuse, I refuse to be silenced. This is my story, and I don't care what anyone else thinks or wants me to do with it. I look back at all of the growth I had taken a chance on myself to do. Many of the positive things that started presenting in my life came from this chapter. As humans, we make mistakes, and this is how we learn. I made almost every don't do mistake when dealing with my covertly narcissistic ex. I lost employment, people left my life, and I almost lost myself. My behaviors needed change too. To this effort, I have tried to reach out and make amends with people I have wronged in the past. I spent a great deal of time focused inward, and I learned so much about myself. I made the changes, and I will continue to do so, and for that, I'm grateful. I only push forward, never fall back, no regrets. For anyone who hasn't experienced this kind of abuse, it can be unbelievable, insidious, calculated, and cruel. And to that I say, I believe you, survivor. Thank you everybody for checking out my video on understanding narcissism, and thank you everybody for listening to my story. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Before I leave, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the link in the description box below for my website. The next episode will be on recognizing and overcoming fear triggers after narcissistic abuse. As always, I've got more coming soon, and I'll see you in the next one.